Good morning, Anil sir.
Good morning, Mr. Gautam.
Sir, we will start our webinar at 11 o'clock, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Untitled sir, shall we start, sir?
Sure. Yes, Gautam, we can start.
So, okay, sir. Namaste, good morning all. On behalf of NIDM, I am Gautam, Junior Consultant, GIS and Diversity. Welcome you all to the today's webinar on Geospatial methods and tools for landslide management organized by NIDM. Before we start our webinar, I would like to convey my sincere thanks to Sri Taj Hassan, IPS AD, and Professor Subhakasa, Head GMR Division and CBR Industrial and Cyber DRR Division, NIDM, Minister of Home Affairs, Government of India, Delhi, for giving this opportunity to conduct this online webinar. Without late, I will set the context of today's webinar. Landslides are portrayed as one of the major risks that could result in catastrophic disasters and will have on communities, human settlements, animals, livelihood, and the environment, causing enormous losses and damages either directly or indirectly over time. Landslides cause significant economic losses due to destruction of infrastructure, including buildings, roads, bridges, dams, communication networks, and ports, as well as culture and national treasures that are priceless and irreplaceable to local and others. Over the past few decades, technology progress has significantly increased our ability to respond to these immediate hazards by creating a solid data framework and leading this competency through effective and comprehensive catastrophic management. Geospatial technologies are enhancing the planning, response times, collaborations, and communications under the post-trying conditions. Our Honorable Prime Minister in his 10-point agenda also exhorted to leverage modern sciences and technology for reducing the risks of the disaster. In today's webinar, we will be discussing on the role of advancing technology and the special technology in reducing the mitigating the risk of landslides. To talk more about these topics, we have joined with Sri Anil Katayat sir, VHS CDC India, and Dr. Harjit Kaur madam from NIDA. Before starting our technical sessions, on behalf of Professor Surya Prakash sir, I would like to invite and thank the distinguished speakers and participants to this webinar. Teacher, I would like to inform that due to sudden engagements, Professor Prakash sir will not be able to join during this inaugural session, but he has sent best wishes to the participant and distinguished panelists and speakers. Dear participants, please note that you can associate questions and inquiries in chat box and also in question sections. And also please make sure that to attend and pay attention to the sessions to claim the certificate from NIDM portal after this webinar. So without late, I'd like to introduce our first speaker to our audience. Sri Anil Katayat sir is currently working as a Technical Officer Emergency Management, VHS CDC India. He is a postgraduate in geology with over 8.5 years of experience in the field of landslide hazard management and disaster management. Prior, he worked with some of the prestigious organizations such as NIDM, UNDP, NIUA, and CRRI. He penned 20 research papers on various aspects of landslide hazard mitigation and management, inter alia, and contributed to drafting the engineering guidelines on landslide mitigation measures for Indian roads. With this, I'd like to invite Sri Anil Katayat sir. Sir, the floor is yours.
Uh, thank you very much, Mr. Gautam, for providing me this opportunity, and very good morning to all our other panelists as well as our participants who have joined us today in this webinar. So let me share my screen. Mr. Gautam, I hope my PowerPoint is visible.
Yes, I confirm, sir.
So as you know, as today's theme is on geospatial technology for monitoring for the management of landslides. And in this, I will be talking about how geospatial technology can be utilized for monitoring of critical landslides. So as you know, the safety of slopes and the management of landslides, they have always been a major concern, especially in the hilly terrains, not only in our country, but also across the globe. And this landslide, it is one of the major hydrogeological hazard that affects a large part of our a large landmass of our country, right from the mighty Himalayan range from north to coastal areas of our south. As you know, in terms of area, our country is seventh largest country in the world, and it is persistently it has been knocked by landslides of varied magnitude throughout the history. As you know, around 12.6% of our country's land area, it is vulnerable to landslides of different magnitude, different size and types. And in management of this cosmopolitan disaster, geospatial technology, it can be handy. As our moderator also highlighted that our Prime Minister in his 10-point agenda, he also exhorted on leveraging technology to enhance the efficiency of our disaster risk management efforts. And these efforts, they must leverage this modern science and technology to enhance this efficiency of our disaster risk management efforts, which requires technology for resource planning, for creation of e-platforms for map, as well as resources on highly specialized aspects of disaster, not only management but also response, and to increase the efficiency of early warning system, which is the most critical component of managing any disasters. So in today, I will be focusing on this aspects, the geospatial technology for monitoring of landslides. So, as you know, this instrumentation, monitoring, forecasting, early warning of landslides, they empowers not only the community or administrator, but also the individuals to respond timely and appropriately to the hazard in order to reduce the risk of death or risk of injury or damage to our property or land or other kind of damage or loss. As what this early warning can um, play a major role. You can take the example of cyclone. Um, in cyclone Odisha super cyclone of 1999, we lost more than 10,000 precious lives. We lost during that event, but simultaneously, when we were able to enhance the strength of our early warning and forecasting for cyclones, we were able to reduce the number of deaths below two digit. So the key of successful landslide management study, it is to design a workable and as well as economical viable schemes of mitigation, as well as preventive measures, and this promotion of innovative, promotion of the modern technologies that we are utilizing. uh, uh, yeah, it gave us edge so that we can predict any impending slope failure in timely, and we can inform our community, we can inform our this on the local administration, so that they can take the appropriate actions, they can take the appropriate measures, so that we can reduce, we can first thing is that we have to avoid, if we are not able to avoid the losses, we have to endeavor for minimizing the losses that can be by any impending disaster. I think my slide is not moving. So this landslide, this Kotupi landslide, it is the perfect example why there is need to understand the behavior of our slope, our fragile slope, why it is utmost important to regularly monitor the health of our fragile slope. So This is the Kotrapi landslides of from Mandi district of Himachal Pradesh, and this landslide was first initiated in year 1977. But at that time, there were no casualty recorded at that time. And after a leap of 20 years, in August 1997, thus this at the same place, the slope failure occurred, and which destroyed a bridge and the road. It was blocked for around a couple to 3 days, and this periodic phenomena at this point, it increased in scale, it increased in devastation power with due course of time. And in the month of August 27, this slope, which was already fragile, it was reactivated for the third time, but this time it left an unforgettable scar in the memory of local communities. And one major point that was highlighted during our investigation documentation of this particular landslides in of Kotipati, it was that if there have been a proper monitoring of these slopes which have a history of some movement in the past, so proper monitoring of such slopes which have potential to fail, they should be monitored appropriately. And the slide was reactivated for third time. So it clearly shows that there was not a proper monitoring of this slope that led to this catastrophe in year 2017. Have been there a proper monitoring of this slope, we would have avoid the life losses we have suffered during August 27 in the Mandya district at this particular landslide. So now I will be discussing some of the case study where the uh, uh, technology has helped us to learn about the hazard and its probable um, um, probable remedial measures to treat this landslide. So this is the Kalya landslides, and it is more than a century or old landslide. It is of a complex slope failure case, which has more than one mode of sliding, and it is at the National Highway 58 of Garhwal region of Uttarakhand state. And this slide was first initiated in year 1920, and since then this slide, it is the source of great concern at this particular national highway, and it has repeatedly activated many times in 50s, in 60s, in I think in a couple of times in 60s, and couple of time in is 80s, as well as 2010, and of course at the time of Kedarnath tragedy in 2013, this slide got reactivated. And in between of minor events of sliding, this slide has experienced many major slides. In 1969, this slide witnessed a major collapse which blocked around three-fourth of uh, three-fourth of river flowing, as well as there was a completely disruption of this traffic on the road. And during again in 70s, 70, 71, and 72, this slide reoccurred, and the communication, it also hampered the communication between the two end of the highway. So after being quiet for some times in 80s, it again reactivated, and the major reactivation of this Kalya landslide, it was in year 2010. When the huge amount of material which slide on, and it completely damaged around 90 to 100 meter of length of highway. And similarly, in year 2013, during the Kedarnath tragedy, it was deactivated. It wreaked mayhem at this particular point. So when I was associated with Central Road Research Institute, which is a laboratory of this Council of Scientific and Industrial Research that aim to monitoring of the monitoring of the slide at this particular point of Kalya. So, but we have installed 75 spatially designed. This is the boundary of landslides that we have demarcated, and we have installed 75 numbers of spatially designed steel pedestals uh, at identified location. And the initial position of these pedestals, they have been installed on the slope. They have been plotted on the contour map that were derived from the digital and data. And after fixing the position of this steel pedestals with the help of differential global position system, the second time of monitoring was done after the monsoon, and this was followed by the third time of monitoring. Here you can see the year-wise monitoring of monitoring of pedestals, and the monitoring of the pedestals. They revealed that out of this most of around 75 pedestals were installed. Out of 75 pedestals, only few have shown, a few have been recorded a significant amount of this movement. And it was noticed that the pedestal installed within the slide boundary, they didn't indicate much of the movement, except there are the pedestals which have shown more movement were are located at two locations, and these two locations, they are on the loose debris, as well as, and the maximum movement was also recorded about the crown part of that indicate active movement. And this result also found coinciding with the activity of the slide, which was mostly confined to this crown part. Uh, Crown part of this slide. And there was also a village here named Chantikhal that has also been shown. There is some movement, agriculture terraces below this village. They have shown a huge cracks were developed. And since none of the pedestals have shown upward lifting, so no, there was no indication of a deep-seated movement that was assumed. And the movement of these pedestals on the slope, they found directly correlated with rainfall correlation. As you can see in this, this is the movement versus rainfall. And this landslide get reactivated during every rainy season, but the intensity of the slide, it varies depending upon the amount and the duration of the rainfall. And rainfall amount in this area have been found varying in different months of the year. And most of the rainfall received it is received during the June to September. And in the month of this June to September 2010, the rainfall broke all the record of past, and which were sufficient to reactivate this slide in year 2010. So we also try to calculate indirect loss of the reactivation during 2010 of these landslides. As you know, this landslide, they are also responsible for considerable economic losses. That is, and the actual losses due to landslide, they are also they are still the topic of debate, as in the role of secondary when hazard, like after the primary hazard of earthquakes, of flash floods or cloud bursts, or when there is glacial lake outburst floods. So in this events, landslide occurred as a secondary disaster, and as a secondary disaster, they are not given the uh, mhm, actual number of deaths or the socioeconomic losses. And as a secondary disaster, landslide also perform a constant in response in rescue recovery phase of that primary disasters. So we conducted a study. This was again in year 2010, and we use a unit cost estimation method to estimate the cost of indirect landslide losses related to highway closure during September to October 2010. And this unit cost method is applicable whenever a unit variable is known, like we a number of days is known, or the unit cost is known. So when is this when any road is closed, the travelers they must follow the detour to that usually take a longer travel distance to reach their destination, and the cost of outage can be estimated by the impact of detour on travels. Similarly, the closure of this National Highway 58 at Kalya landslide, it forced the travelers to take this detouring path when it was closed during the 2010 reactivation. It was around this highway, this detouring part is around 28 kilometer, and we also examine the traffic pattern along the highway and estimated what is the average daily traffic of that particular section. And by putting the required values of the parameters, we calculated the detouring cost for 45 days. And, and during September to October, it was around more than 2.5 million Indian currencies. And this year we have to remember that this indirect cost of detour is still a uh, low estimate, as it does not include other business losses, like this closure of this highway also affects the local tourism, local restaurants. So this is the just an example of how indirect cost of detour, how indirect costs are associated with this landslides. So depending upon the type of movement we got from our monitoring monitoring of this Kalya soil landslides and other geotechnical investigation. So some of the remedial measures were suggested so that the slides can be stabilized. And as you know, this slide, this location, the main problem here is this the rock and debris fall from this count portion, which is fractured rocks and overburden. And so it was thought to prevent the falling off from Mars so that it does not come on the highway, and also does not uh, damage the highway as well as this the road here. So therefore the steep face crest, which is vulnerable for sudden detachment of rock here, it is required to be treated for prevention of a dislodge of rocks and falling from the crust. So it is suggested that steel rope net to be stabilized. So that this kind of basically this kind of stabilization, it is here intention is not to avoid the movement of blocks, but using this steel wire mesh, we will be able to this control the rock from coming out and bouncing on the slopes. And it will also help to control the rock boulders to fall on the highway, and it will avoid damaging the highway as well. So the another landslide that I will be talking, where we have done the same method, has been adopted of the monitoring of the slope as we have done in Kalya soil landslide. It is the Patalganga landslide. This landslide is also located on the National Highway 58 of at the bank of Patalganga River, and the slope material of these landslides, it is composed of it was composed of this assorted moraine with steep slope angles, and basically this landslide, it was first initiated in during the 1917 when there was a flash flood in Patalganga and subsequently in Alaknanda River, which brought in loss to a life and property and unprecedented magnitude. That was a rare catastrophic event in 1970, and it was during that event this slide was developed, and at a yeah, that was a small hamlet which was completely washed off. And since the landslide is repeatedly occurring during every monsoon, at the toe part of this slide, there is a narrow gauge, as you can see here. This is the at the toe side of this landslide. So the slide has potential to block this narrow gauge. As you can see, the shifting of bridge during 1970, the bridge location was here. In 1990, the bridge location was here, and currently the bridge location is here. So this slide has potential to block this narrow gorge and form an artificial dam, which on breaching it may wash the bridge, as well as it can also create the history of a historical flash flood situation that was in year 1970. So here to monitor these landslides in Kalyasur, we have used 675. Here we have used 65 pedestals, specially designed pedestals that had been installed in the landslide boundary and their original position. Here we have also fixed with using DGPS, differential global position systems. And as you can see, this card is giving the pedestal number. This is the initial position that was fixed by DGPS, and this is the second location after the monsoon, and this is the third time monitoring of third time. So the pedestals were monitored before and after the monsoons season to find out the degree of displacement and the movement of pedestals. Basically, it is attributed to the movement of blocks. So monitoring of this Patalganga landslides, it depicts that it has low kind of movement, and the movement of lower magnitude, it has been observed on the upper parts of the landslides area, where higher magnitude movement has been recorded. The higher magnitude movement, it has been recorded in the lower parts of the landslide area. That shows the erosion, that there has been continuous erosion in the toe parts, especially during the monsoon season. So similarly, as we have given the remedial measures for Patalganga, we have also given the remedial measures for this particular landslides, depending upon the type of material and the movement. So this soil nailing was suggested, and as you know, there has been this erosion of toe during the especially during the monsoon season. So the provision for bench in the middle portion, or as well as the rails and gullies where to prevent rails and gullies, longitudinal and transverse drain were also suggested, so that they can collect the water. And there's a structure was also suggested, so that this Patalganga river doesn't erode away the toe of this particular landslides. So apart from using geospatial technology for monitoring of these two landslides, we have also used this spatial technology for monitoring, for the mapping sustainability potential analysis of this Patalganga landslides. So as you know, this landslide sustainability assessment, it has been carried out in order to so that we can segregate area based on the vulnerability of for landslides. And for that, the first the first either you go for landslide sustainability donation or you risk mapping. The first step, it's the you should have a landslide inventory map. So the landslide inventory map has prepared using the satellite imagery of this Patal Ganga basin. And again, the results have been verified through the field visitors. And here for this susceptibility zonation potential zoning, the frequency ratio method was used. And the frequency ratio, basically it is the ratio of area where landslide have occurred to total area, and also is the ratio of the probability of landslide occurrence to probability of a non-occurrence area for a given factor or given attribute, whether it can be this vegetation cover, it can be drainage pattern. So therefore, in frequency, in this method, frequency method, greater the ratio above unity, the stronger the relation. There is stronger relationship between landslide occurrence and the given factors attributes. And when there is lower the ratio below the unity, then there is lesser the relationship between the landslide occurrence and to the given factors. And these are the different factors, different attributes that had been considered for this potential zoning, sustainability zoning. So to calculate the frequency ratio, table was constructed for each of these landslide related factors. Then the ratio of landslide occurrence and non-occurrence was calculated, and the ratio of this each range and each type of factor to the total area, it was calculated. And the frequency ratio for each this type of factor was calculated by dividing the landslide occurrence ratio. And finally, this the final landslide susceptibility map out for the area was prepared by overlapping all the variable depicting the frequency ratio and the map, so that the inner lying areas, they are basically more susceptible to landslides, and the areas surrounding the higher susceptible areas, they moderately are vulnerable to landslides. And any landsliding initiating activities like earthquake or, as you know, heavy precipitation, they are also responsible for initiating landslides. So they can lead to the occurrence of landslides, especially in the Himalayan regions. Landslides and landslides can be initiated by other disasters like earthquake, by like unprecedented disasters like earthquake, by like unprecedented, when there is unprecedented rainfall, or when there is flash flood, or cloud burst. So before closing, as our honorable Prime Minister, he has in his 10-point mantra is for disaster risk reduction. He urged to fully utilize the advantage of modern technology to enhance so that we can enhance our efficiency, our efficacy for managing those disaster risks. So we need to capitalize the modern space technologies in all phases of this disaster management, from preparedness, from prevention to recovery to response. Also, we, as you know, the fourth point of our PM 10-point agenda, it advocated in investing in risk mapping, so that we can ensure that we have a common understanding of the nature of the severity of any disaster. So apart from doing research on whatever the current disaster, we also study the area of the potential hazard which are the area that have potential that particular hazard can occur in near future. And the characteristics of the disasters, they are changing with time. So now, as you know, the disasters are more frequent, they are more fierce, as so Uh, like during COVID, we also during COVID pandemic, we also faced other mayhem. Like we have faced a couple of cyclones where struck the India. Then there was floods in, especially in the northeastern region of our country. So our approach, our planning, it should be also. That the disasters, the planning for disaster can't be done in silos. So we need the need of this the hour is that we go for a holistic, we go for a multi-hazard approach. So for so that we can achieve our vision of a disaster resilient India. We need to mainstream DRR in our uh, every activities, and as urged by our honorable Prime Minister in his 10-point agenda. So with this words, I close my talk here, and I pass on this floor to the moderator. Over to you, Mr. Gautam.
Thank you, sir. Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for delivering a session on geospatial technology for monitoring of critical landslide and also for sharing your experience. So, as of now, there is no questions from audience.
Okay, Gautam.
Sir, on behalf of NIDM and participants, I could like to convey my sincere thanks to you, sir, for taking time on joining with us today.
Thank you once again, Mr. Gautam, for inviting me.
So, thank you so much, sir. So, dear participants, we are moving to our second technical session. I'd like to introduce our second speaker to our audience, Dr. Harjit Kaur. She is working as an Azure consultant in National Institute of Disaster Management, India. She is currently working in Coastal Disaster Risk Reduction and Resiliency Center in GMR division of NIDM. Prior to this, she was working in Landslide Risk Management in Kalya, Sikkim. Dr. Hajkar has published over 30 research publications in reputed international journals. She is a recipient of a number of awards, fellowship, and professional reorganizations such as the Young Scientist Award, Gold Medalist in UG and PG Studies, Inspire Fellowship, etc. With this, I'd like to invite Dr. Hajkar. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gautam, for giving me this opportunity to present my research work on landslide risk assessment with our dear participants. So could you assign me the presenter right, Gautam?
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Hope my PPT is visible to all.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I think all the participants have a background about like our previous speaker, Mr. Anil Kathar, talk about the different type of landslide, and he emphasized on how we can analyze or map the critical landslide in our country. Basically, he focused for the Uttarakhand terrain. So here I would like to introduce how we can analyze the risk for landslide hazard. So this is the landslide hazard zone map of our country, which is prepared by the Geological Survey of India. So dear participant, the main motto to show this map is that you can analyze which area is vulnerable due to a landslide hazard. So from here you have an idea that the areas which falls under the category of pink, it falls under very high to high hazard landslide zone in our country. So you can choose or select your study means area for your research work. So these are some vulnerable slope, which I have found during my field visit. And you can observe that how we can, like, even in geologists, they can analyze or they can predict the slope vulnerability through their visual interpretation. So these are some steps or through where you can easily identify that these slopes are vulnerable due to landslide. Like here, you can see that in figure A that here is a gabion wall, retaining wall is made by the government, and it have some fractures in this retaining wall. So that means it is indicating that this slope is vulnerable due to landslide. From here in diagonally, you just see in figure D that the slope, the road is sinking, which indicates, which also indicate that this road or this area is vulnerable due to landslide. So like this way, you can like if trees are standing at that hill area, so you can identify that these slopes are variable. So these are some steps or a visual steps of visual interpretation for landslide occurrences at a particular slope. So for risk assessment, the main important thing that you have to map the inventory. So in our terminology, inventory indicates that um, past data of landslide occurrence. So how you can map this thing? So landslide inventory, like first thing is that through field visit, you can map it. But the thing is, you can map only the fresh landslides or from landslide which occurred from 1 or 2 years in this span time period. Then, because for risk assessment, you need 20 or 30 years of data. So that how you can map these old slides. So through satellite imagery, you can map the past landslide data, and we have our authentic and government organization which is responsible or nodal agency to map the uh, landslide for our country. So like you can visit the GSI office and you can get the past data, landslide data from their office, and you can prepare the map for according to your study area. DST from DST issued many project to different organization throughout our country. So many scientists and institution universities, they have the project relevant to your study. So like these ways you can collect your data relevant to the past event. Then you can also follow up the local newspaper, because from local newspaper you can get the area locality where it happened and geological the location of your particular event in the past area, so that from that time and with that date you can purchase the satellite data to map the landslide area. So like this way you can get the past data from the different organizations. Uh, then obviously the freshers, they don't know how to interpret the landslide from the satellite imagery. So through your expert, through your supervisor, you are able to predict and calculate or map the landslide area in the through satellite imagery. Then the main important thing after collecting of the past data, that is your inventory, you have to prepare the inventory map. The mostly what I have found in the research article that mostly researcher or scientist community used point location to indicate the landslide inventory map, but that is only used for your susceptibility analysis. If you want to go for risk assessment, you need the area of that particular landslide. So that's why you have to map the landslide. Then you are able to calculate, like in the inventory there are different analysis, so you have to prepare the inventory based a landslide inventory and area frequency analysis to calculate the spatial probability. Like these are some terminology, like for hazard mapping we go for the spatial probability and temporal probability analysis. So here event-based landslide inventory indicates that first, we should know that this particular landslide is caused by rainfall or by an earthquake or through preparatory factors. So through the analysis, we have used a different analysis, and later I will explain. So what we have found that mostly in the Sikkim Himalayan, the landslide occurred due to the rainfall. And the second triggering factor is the earthquake. And there are some preparatory factors like geology, lithology, lineament, drainage, other factors where we are input factor for the landslide occurrences. So all these information is mapped in Arcgis environment. So like I have told you, we have to go for the risk assessment. So here you can see in this figure that risk is the product of hazard and vulnerability. So here we have to calculate the hazard and vulnerability. So for hazard, like in the input factor, you can see that these are the preparatory factors. So we have these factor map. Then we have prepared the susceptibility, because susceptibility, with the help of the susceptibility map, we are able to calculate the landslide hazard and then the vulnerability. So here in this figure, you can see that I have mentioned the spatial probability. So how we can calculate this thing? Like just in this image, you can see that I have placed some rectangle boxes. These are indicating the building footprint at a particular area. So after getting the susceptibility map, we just impose this susceptibility map on the building footprint map. So you can see this, like I have classified here, you can see the low, medium, high, and very high hazard areas. So this is the very high. The red indicates the high susceptible zone, low susceptible zone, and medium susceptible zone. Then we have a landslide inventory area map. So we have just imposed, place these three map with together to calculate the spatial probability for the landslide hazard. So like these way, we are able to calculate the hazard as a map for the landslide. Then after getting the landslide hazard, because we know that we have to calculate the vulnerability, you need to have clear on your mind that hazard is dependent on the susceptibility, but for the vulnerability we need a different factors map. different input factors map. So these are not interlinked. Only why we are going for hazard and vulnerability analysis? Because we want risk. So that's why for the vulnerability, we have considered the physical vulnerability and social vulnerability. Like in physical vulnerability, we have considered the buildings, road, lifeline structures, and in social vulnerability, we have considered mainly the population data. And further, we have divided this population data into different like a level of exposure, sensitivity, lack of resilience. So like these way, we have divided our vulnerability. So basically, vulnerability has different type. It is classified as physical vulnerability, social vulnerability, economic vulnerability, environmental vulnerability. So these are the type of vulnerability. But for like first we should focus that we are here calculating the landslide risk assessment. So according to the data availability, we fixed our parameter for the calculation of overall vulnerability for the particular area. Sorry. So now this is the prediction how we can go for the temporal and spatial probability analysis, which will give the product a hazard. Okay, so here the temporal probability, like here I'm calculating through the discriminant analysis we have used for antecedent rainfall. Excuse me. हेलो, अब मेरा लेक्चर चल रहा है, अभी बाद में कॉल करती हूँ मैं. Sorry for the interruption. So we have to calculate the temporal probability. So temporal probability, we have the inventory data. We have the major, we have divided our inventory like major, minor, and moderate landslide, like area wise and volume wise. We have classified our landslide, past landslide data. Then we have collected the rainfall data day wise, because I have told that for the temporal probability calculation, you need the particular date of occurrence and time of the landslide. So for out of the 200 landslide data, I have 60 landslide data which have detailed mapping, like with area, volume, time of occurrences. So with these only for the 60 landslide data, we went for the temporal probability. So here I have used discriminant analysis to calculate, like I have told in my introduction in landslide occurrences, that in Sikkim, Himalaya, mostly rainfall is responsible. So these statement is justified by this analysis. Okay. We have IMT, so you can go for IMT and take your data, relevant data, according to your date of occurrence of the landslide. I have mentioned the date and time, then they have given the tiny data, like after 1 hour, second, means the hourly analysis also we did for our to calculate the return period. So like these way we have calculated the temporal probability of landslide, and after getting the map of temporal probability with these formula, we are able to calculate the spatial probability. So these are the map, like I have told that we have classified our 60 landslide data into major landslide, moderate landslide, and uh, lower landslides. So here you can see similarly I have prepared 3 different special hazard map. You just mark my words that I have prepared 3 map, 3 hazard landslide map according to the inventory data. I have classified my data into 3 category: high, moderate, and minor. So these patches indicates that here the landslide, these are the high hazard zone, because mostly I have collected data from here, and these falls under the category of these are mostly the Gangtok area, the GMC areas, and these patches falls under Singtam city. So like these way we are able to identify the landslide hazard map in our area. Uh, Susceptibility calculation and hazard calculation is different. Mostly people they can just combine this thing, and through the susceptibility map they can calculate the risk map. So that is the wrong thing and wrong methodology. Uh, you have to adopt a different methodology, and like in globally different scientists and researchers use different method to calculate the landslide hazard. So don't combine these map to calculate the risk assessment. So for limitations, I have told in our country there is a data availability is mostly depend on the field area. Like from my past experience, what I have faced that somebody refused to give the survey relevant to your research work, and my study area falls under some security zone area, and that area refused the survey. So the analysis depend upon the accuracy of analysis. It depends, because it doesn't means that those area they refuse the survey, they don't have a landslide. In reports we have found that that particular area have their landslide in their area, so but they have refused the survey. Then there is no standard methodology to calculate the susceptibility in our globally. There is no standard, and we don't know like these input factors maps are responsible or not. What we are doing, we are just uh, reading the different research article, and we are come up with the uh, that we are selecting 16 parameters according to the availability of data for your particular field. So these are some limitations to go for landslide risk assessment analysis. Now, for vulnerability analysis, as previously I have told that here basically we have focused for the physical and social vulnerability. So this is the quantitative data value, and this is all the like physical element data. So this is the map representation, like previously. Just a minute. Yeah. It's empty. Yeah. Here I have shown you the quantitative data value, like total incomplete survey, like is 0.64, and who refused the survey 160.78. So these are the total value. Now, because here we are talking about the GS methodology, so how we can use. So if first work is to prepare the building footprint map of your particular study area, then input or feed your these quantitative value to particular buildings. Like for the physical vulnerability, according to landslide as a hazard, we have considered the most the building those are more vulnerable, like unpaved buildings are more vulnerable. So like these way, material wise, we have classified paved, unpaved, and semi permanent building. According to your field visit, you must go field, and you should identify the building typology according to your hazard. Like for earthquake, we go for the RCC, those building are RCC or not, building floor wise, building heights, like this way. But building heights are not most important in our landslide hazard. So like these way, through literature review, you have to identify the input factors for your particular study. This is the all I'm just showing building footprint map for the physical element for a particular area at a community level. You can just see these are the boxes. Rectangle boxes indicates the building footprint map, and for the physical element I have told that we have considered the road, drainage system. Here Jhora indicates the drainage because in their Nepali language they call drainage as a Jhora. Then paved and unpaved road and the areas those refuse the survey. So you need this type of data to calculate the accurate risk analysis. So here you can see I am showing building of my study area, which the main the motto of the to show these images is to identify the building typology in this area. So you can see that there is a high-rise building and they have the small hut-shaped building which is known as the ikra houses in their area. So you can identify this building and prepare the building footprint map for all these cities. And this is the quantitative value for the social element, where we have the population data, we have classified, like we have the male population data, female population data, building wise with the institutional, like those population are working or not. These data is also important to calculate the vulnerability. So for the vulnerability analysis, I have used the formula given by the IPPCC, where they have used vulnerability is equal to exposure plus resistance and resilience. So how we can prepare the exposure? For exposure, we have who are at exposure. Obviously, the population, we know the male and female population data. Then resistance, the building wise, resilience, those are able to, like RCC buildings, paved building, like these way we have the data. So first we have calculated the physical vulnerability and then prepared these physical vulnerability map in Arcgis environment, then social vulnerability, and then after we combining all this, we get the overall vulnerability of a particular area. So here you can see we have considered the 7 parameters: building material, where we have subdivided into these building material: paved, unpaved, semi-permanent, then building ownership, like these buildings private or government building, then building floor, because it's a city area, they have high-rise buildings. So we have just, because in landslide we are not considering a more high-rise or floor-wise building. So we have considered only the floor having more than first floor. Then building use, like they have a different type of buildings which is used for a different purpose, like the residential buildings, commercial buildings are there, hotels are there because it's a tourist place, shops are there, and hospitals. So you need every data if you want to calculate the appropriate risk. Then we have the lifeline structure. Sorry, the data is not here, but for lifeline structure, we have considered the roads. Then we have considered the there is a BSNL TV towers there, electrical towers are there, drainage pipelines. So like these way we have classified our lifeline structure. Then we have also considered the vacant land plot, because these according like landslide occurs everywhere in every slopes, in vulnerable slopes, sorry. So here at that time during my field and my research work, there are some buildings those are under construction. So we never classify these type of building or land under the category of building. So that's why we have all this type of structure under the vacant land plot, where we have considered car parking area, children parks are there, school ground, playgrounds are there, waste disposal areas are there, graveyards is there, swimming pool is there. Because why we are are considering like in because sometime there is a population or at a particular time the population gather to enjoy their life. So that's why we have the data of the vacant land plot area for the particular study area. Then we have the miscellaneous factors like there is a public toilet, washrooms are there, greenhouse are there, and waiting shades like for in the hilly terrain, the mostly like in our area, there is a bus stop. And so similarly, there have waiting shades are there. So like these way, we have classified our physical element according to the availability of the data and the input map. Now it's time for the social vulnerability. How we can calculate the social vulnerability? I have mentioned the formula and the reference through which I have calculated the social vulnerability, which is through sensitivity and lack of resilience and averaging these factor map, we are able to calculate the social vulnerability. So here for sensitivity, we have four factors like younger population, female population, illiterate population, and the population density map. And compiling all these four maps and averaging them, we calculated the sensitive population, then lack of resilience. We have the data of tenant population, slum population, and the building those have a drainage problem and water connection problem. So like these way we have prepared the lack of resilience map, and summing all this map, we calculated the social vulnerability of the area. So these are the map of social and physical vulnerability, and overall output is summing these social vulnerability and physical vulnerability. We are able to calculate the vulnerability of the particular area. So because you can see it showing a patches, because we have accurate, we have the building footprint map. So that's why we are able to identify which buildings falls under the category of high or low vulnerable or low hazard zone. You can see these are the map for similarly map for the Gangtok area. And this is the overall vulnerability. You can see this red patches, which indicates the high vulnerability buildings. This is the quantitative data for the vulnerability analysis. So now it's time to calculate the risk. So we know that risk is the product of hazard and vulnerability, and I have shown you the path how you can calculate the hazard and vulnerability for a particular hazard. This is the compiling of all the hazard and vulnerability map in Arcgis environment. We having these risk map for the particular two location for Gangtok and one for the Singtamil. And this is the percentage of the areas of risk area occupied within the study area. So you can see that in the Gangtok area, 10% of the areas falls under the high risk area, and here in the Gangtok area, the 17% of the areas falls under the category of high risk, and where you can see the in the Singtam area, it falls under the category of, means the mostly area falls under the category of a low risk zone. So this is all publication relevant to the landslide risk assessment. And now the way forward from my presentation is we should go for appropriate analysis. I have told that there are some limitations. We don't know what is the standard methodology to calculate the susceptibility or how we can do the hazard analysis. So we should fix some standards to analyze the susceptibility and hazard. the person or the populations who are living at vulnerable slope. Actually, we can't move their houses because we have some limitation, but we can train them so that they can they are able to deal with that emergency situation. So here I would recommend for the pre-incident training and mock drills for the people those are living at a vulnerable slope. And uh, uh, we need to identify the more input factors for the vulnerability study, because like in sociology research, what I have found that mostly they went for the economic and environmental vulnerability also, but according to the data availability for landslide hazard, we combined our vulnerability analysis up to the two types, like the social vulnerability and physical vulnerability. So here I would recommend that we should go for something standard cost effective methodology to calculate the vulnerability analysis, and we need to adapt or welcoming all the new methodologies to predict a better landslide hazard for the particular area. And as there is a famous proverb that we cannot stop any natural hazard, but we can reduces the risk. So at least we can reduce the risk to a tolerable level by avoiding unplanned urbanizations and whatever through our hand we can do. So thank you very much. And back to you, Mr. Gautam. Gautam?
Yeah. Thank you so much for delivering a session on a GIS-based landslide risk assessment, ma'am, and for sharing your experience.
Thank you very much, Gautam.
Can we wait a couple of minutes for questions, ma'am?
Yes, yes. Please, you can ask.
As of now, there's no question from the audience.
Okay. Gautam, if letter they asked, you can mail me or you can text me.
Oh, sure. Sure. Ma'am, on behalf of NIDM and participants, once again, thank you for joining with us today.
Thank you very much, Gautam.
Dear participants, this is the end of today's webinar. Before concluding today's session, I'd like to convey my sincere thanks to Sri Tajasun, PhD, and Professor Surya Prakash, Head German Division and CBR and Industrial and Cyber Division, NIDM. And also my heartfelt thanks to Sri Anil Kadat sir and Arcgis Kaur, and also panel members and participants. With special thanks to IT section of NIDM, who is working behind this curtain. We will meet again in the next training program. Thank you for all of you for joining with us today. Jay.